I was just mindlessly scrolling through videos not expecting much, until I saw them. That couple sharing ice cream on the street, looking so blissfully in love, was my husband and his college sweetheart. And the shirt he was wearing? I had just ironed it for him last night. In that moment I didn't hesitate. I've endured this marriage for 40 years but now, it's over. People always underestimate a housewife. But once she wakes up they have no idea how ruthless she can be. It was early Saturday morning when my husband, Dr. Charles Bennett, left for a faculty meeting at the college. Charles always treated the university like it was his second home. As one of the most respected senior professors at Eastbridge College, he never strayed far from academia, not even on weekends. I'd grown used to his early departures and late returns, just as I'd grown used to running this household alone. That morning I mopped the floors 3 times, did the laundry and carefully pressed Charles's shirts and slacks. He was meticulous about his clothes. Everything had to be crisp, flawless. No creases, no wrinkles. For 40 years I'd followed that same routine. Somewhere along the way it stopped feeling like a task and became a part of the marriage itself. By the time I looked up it was already noon. I threw together a quick sandwich and started thinking about what groceries I'd need for the evening. Today was our 40th wedding anniversary. Our son Ryan and his wife Natalie were bringing over our grandson Liam for dinner. Charles couldn't stand the smell of pork. Ryan refused to eat vegetables. Natalie was on another health kick. Low fat, low carb, everything bland. Liam had a seafood allergy. Planning a family dinner always gave me a headache. I nibbled on my lunch while scrolling through Instagram reels, hoping to stumble upon some recipe ideas. That's when a local video caught my eye. A gray-haired couple stood side by side on the sidewalk. The woman held an ice cream cone, laughing as she took a small lick, then gently raised it toward the man's lips. He smiled tenderly, cupping her hand in his own as he leaned in to take a bite, right from the same spot. There was something so intimate, so achingly sweet about the moment. Their hair had silvered, their faces lined with age, but the warmth between them felt tangible, like you could reach through the screen and touch it. The person filming had been just a passerby, yet even they couldn't help murmuring, "God, I hope I find someone to grow old with like that." If I hadn't recognized them, maybe I would have sighed along, touched by the beauty of lifelong love. But I did recognize them. The man was wearing a crisp white shirt and charcoal gray slacks, the exact outfit I'd ironed for him last night. I still had the red welt on my wrist from a burst of steam. The polished black leather shoes on his feet? I'd buffed them with shoe polish just this morning. That man was my husband, Charles Bennett. And the woman feeding him ice cream? Vivian Harper. His college flame. Time had etched fine lines around her eyes, but her beauty hadn't faded. She wore a form-fitting vintage dress that showed off her slender figure. Her poise was effortless, her elegance untouched by age. The video looped again and again. I lost track of time. My vision blurred, and I didn't even realize the tears had started until they splashed onto my apron, smearing a grease stain on the soft curve of my belly. And then, out of nowhere, a thought surfaced. Charles has always been a neat freak. He eats from blue ceramic bowls with dark wooden chopsticks. Drinks only from a clear glass. I, on the other hand, use white porcelain dishes, light utensils, a ceramic mug. And God forbid we ever mix them up. When it was just the two of us at dinner, he would actually use a spatula to draw an imaginary line across the serving dish. A literal boundary. Whatever portion he served himself was his. The rest was mine. Once I accidentally reached over the invisible line. He slammed his cutlery on the table so hard, soup splashed all over my face. Back then we lived in a cramped old apartment, the kind where the stove broke every other week. Still, I cleaned everything up and started cooking again. Only after I'd coaxed him into finishing his meal did I realize the sharp pain twisting through my abdomen. It was just weeks after I'd given birth. And in that moment, as I sat alone, my heart clenched like it was being crushed in a vice. My mouth opened but no air came in. All those memories I'd tried so hard to bury came crashing back like a tidal wave. From the moment I got pregnant and gave birth, Charles and I hadn't shared a bed in 38 years. Kissing? Almost non-existent. On the rare occasions we did have sex, he was cold, mechanical, never tender. Sounds pathetic, I know. I used to believe that's just who Charles Bennett was. Distant, indifferent, emotionally unavailable. I thought it wouldn't have mattered who he married, he'd always be this way. But today I realized I was wrong. Charles could laugh. He could hold someone's hand. He could take a bite from an ice cream cone that another woman had already tasted. Turns out his obsession with cleanliness was only ever meant for me. I don't know if I cried myself to sleep or simply passed out from sheer exhaustion and heartbreak. When I woke up on the couch, it was already 4 in the afternoon. I heard voices coming from Charles's study, low, measured academic tones. I walked to the bathroom, washed my face, then went to the bedroom and changed into the nicest outfit I owned. After that, I headed toward his study. He was on a video call with one of his students discussing something I couldn't begin to understand. Some dense academic theory, no doubt. When he heard the door open, he glanced over his shoulder and in the split second he moved out of frame, gave me a sharp look and gestured subtly for me to leave. I pretended not to notice. I stood perfectly still. Left with no choice, he continued his performance, playing the gentle, devoted professor, patiently guiding his student through whatever intellectual maze they were lost in. I just stood there studying the man I'd lived with for 40 years. His gray hair was slicked back neatly with gel. Thin gold-rimmed glasses rested on his prominent nose. Age had softened his once harsh features, giving him the appearance of refinement, of dignity. But who would believe that this so-called kind and respectable man hadn't even bothered to check on his wife passed out cold on the couch? Charles finally ended the call and closed his laptop, his brows now drawn in a deep scowl. "What are you standing there for? Ryan's coming over for dinner. You know what time it is? You haven't even started cooking. I need to talk to you." I stepped forward, closer to his desk. Maybe I'd been standing too long because my legs gave out a little. I had to grab onto a stack of papers just to steady myself. Charles immediately snapped. "How clumsy can you be? You can't even walk straight. Don't touch my files." He reached out to shove me away, then hesitated, almost like he was repulsed by the idea of touching me. The awkwardness of his gesture would have been laughable if it hadn't been so familiar. That, right there, that was how he'd treated me all these years. I used to endure it. I used to tell myself to stay quiet, to smile through it. But today, for the first time, I truly felt it. That raw, seething thing called rage. "Charles, did you really go to a meeting today?" Color surged into his face in an instant. His voice was sharp, defensive. "You're accusing me? I've worked my ass off for decades. Every weekend I'm in meetings. If I weren't out there working, how else would you sit around this house like a damn parasite?" I looked at his contorted face and suddenly, everything was crystal clear. "Professor Bennett, have you ever thought about how much it would cost to hire a live-in housekeeper on call 24 hours a day? I do work. I just don't get paid for it. Let me remind you, back then I could have gone to college too. I gave up my education so you could finish yours. I dropped out and took 3 jobs just to support you." Charles hadn't expected me to fight back like this. His lips quivered, his posture faltered. "I don't want to argue. There's no point in dredging all this up. Just go cook dinner." But I wasn't going to let it go. Not this time. I pulled out my phone, turned the volume all the way up and held the video right in front of his face. His expression shifted. "Elaine, what's this supposed to mean? I ran into Vivian by chance. What was I supposed to do? People love to make assumptions." I gave a cold laugh. "You mean that spontaneous ice cream coincidence? But Charles, you don't even eat sweets." His eyes darkened. His voice rose until it nearly shook the walls. "You've always been this petty, just like 40 years ago. You never change. I swear to God, nothing happened between me and Vivian. Don't taint our friendship with your twisted suspicions." I suddenly felt bone-deep exhaustion. Was this really the man I'd loved and stood by for 40 years? I walked into the kitchen, grabbed Charles's bowl and his drinking glass and returned to his study. "You've spent our entire marriage separating everything in this house, right down to the dishes we eat from. But with Vivian Harper, you didn't seem to mind sharing a damn ice cream cone." I raised the bowl and the glass and smashed them hard against the floor. Porcelain and glass shards exploded across the hardwood. Charles jumped back in alarm. A shard grazed my cheek. I felt the sting as a drop of blood welled up. I wiped it away with the back of my hand and said quietly, "For 40 years you've refused to eat from my bowl, drink from my cup, no matter how clean I made them. So now I've broken yours. Tonight would you be willing to eat from mine? Drink from my cup? If you dare lie, may you and Vivian rot in hell." Charles froze. He stared at me for a long moment before finally replying, his voice eerily calm. Don't be ridiculous. It's still early. I'll just go buy a new set. I let out a small laugh. A university professor, too afraid of a curse to offer even a single comforting lie to his own wife. Charles despised me, but years ago he married me because he couldn't afford college on his own. Me. I was head over heels in love with him. I knew I wasn't pretty enough for him. I clung to my grades just to feel like I had some worth. I had better test scores than he ever did, but I gave it all up, left school, worked 3 jobs, just so he could finish his degree. For decades I gave him everything. And in return he gave me distance, coldness, revulsion. And now he could hold Vivian's hand and eat from her ice cream cone without flinching. The fire in my heart that had burned for so many years finally went out. We're done, Charles. I walked to the bedroom and began packing in silence, his bitter words still echoing in my ears. You're 60 years old and suddenly think you're some modern woman trying to break up? Please. Who's gonna feed you, clothe you? You're just a housewife. I could hire a cleaner tomorrow who'd do a better job. You think you're worth something? You're old. What man in his right mind would want you? Everyone needs an outlet for their emotions. Charles was always the perfect gentleman in public, but the moment he stepped through our front door he turned sharp, cold, and cutting. To him I was clumsy, slow-witted, plain-looking, and utterly unimpressive in every possible way. But at least I worked hard. I was healthy. I wouldn't starve on the street. And more importantly, I had one irreplaceable lifeline in my world. My wild, irreverent, and endlessly loyal best friend, Samantha Quinn. Meeting her was without a doubt the greatest stroke of luck in my life. Just then my phone buzzed. A voice message. I hit play. Samantha's voice came bursting through, vibrant and unapologetic as ever. Elaine, I just pulled out of the garage. I'll be at your place in 20 minutes. Want me to bring 2 muscleheads to beat the crap out of that old bastard? I couldn't help but laugh. I'll wait for you downstairs. Thanks for taking me in, darling. I finished packing in a flash, zipped up my suitcase and dragged it toward the front door. But just as I reached for the handle, it swung open from the outside. There stood Ryan. Behind him were Natalie and little Liam. Ryan snatched the suitcase from my hand, his tone instantly laced with irritation. Mom, seriously? You're too old for this kind of drama. Dad just got home from work, he's exhausted, and now you're making a scene? Can't you show him a little compassion?